Hey everybody, John with Owl and I am going to install the transit ladder today. And first I want to start by saying thank you to all the people that waited patiently for literally the years it took for us to come out with this. I've gone over this before, but we didn't want to just create something that was okay. We really wanted to make something that kind of matched what we did on the Sprinter for the Transit and really make it that level of quality. And so it took a while because we've been busy. This ladder installs on either set of hinges. So whether you have the hinges that allow the door to open all the way against the side of the van, or if you have what we call the 180 hinges that came originally on this van. Now you can see the color of the hinges on this van. They kind of look white in the video, but they're actually uncoated because we swapped hinges on this van to make sure the ladder works with both. If you have the 270 hinges and the door opens all the way up, you do want to make sure that you're not slamming the door into the side of the van. We're going to work on some sort of stopper. You can obviously create one yourself, but that's next up. First, we wanted to get the ladder out. If you have a van like this one, then you don't need to open it past the first stopper. And what I mean is, this opens to there, and then to open it further, you have to pull this little deal. And so we're saying if you have a ladder or the B2 installed, then you don't need to worry about popping that latch and opening it further. Now let's get down to business on installing this. When you get the ladder, you're going to have some accessory boxes, and then you're going to have one of these. This is to hold the wheel on. Transits have a big hub on the factory wheel. However, if you have aftermarket wheels, like our Talon wheel, you see that the inside of the Talon wheel is much, much smaller, and so we have a smaller puck. If you have one of these wheels with a smaller center hub, then you're going to want the smaller cone. These cones are not super cheap, so we don't actually include both cones in the order. If you know you have one or the other, you can obviously write customer service before we ship your product. If not, if you need the opposite kind, then reach out to customer service and we can get that out to you. Now forgive me a little bit because this is a reinstall, if you will, because this is the van that we already had a ladder on. So I'm not actually going to be doing some things because they've already been done, but I'm going to show you how to do it. So this ladder already has the all thread installed and the foot peg. So one of the things you want to do with the foot peg is make sure that it's screwed all the way down and seated against the ladder pretty tight, and you can put some Loctite on this. The reason you want to do that is this foot peg is not strong unless it's seated against the ladder. If you have it off the ladder and you have a gap, then this can actually, it's not as structural as it is if it's tightened all the way down. So I'm going to set the ladder off to the side. The first thing we're going to do on this van as I bring you in close is what you're probably most nervous about, and that is installing this plate. The only reason that people get nervous about this part is because they're drilling a hole in their van. It turns out it's incredibly easy. We've been selling carriers that require a single hole for years. Nobody's ever screwed it up yet. And the nice thing is this template is where you drill the hole. I'm going to pause for this truck. In your kit of accessories, which is going to look like this, you're going to have one of these plates. It's aluminum, so it doesn't rust. So you can, the reason we did that is because if you run a drill bit through here and it takes off any of the paint on the inside of the hole where the bolt goes, it's not going to rust. You do, however, want to spray some paint in there when you're done installing and done drilling, because you're going through the metal sheet metal of the vehicle. So when you're done with all this, if you want, you can tape this off and just put the head of a spray can in there and spray that hole that you've drilled. So this template slash door structure, the reason we oversized this is it spreads the load out on the door. The other thing we've done is we've grabbed this seam up here, this seam here, and this edge seam here. It makes everything stronger. One of the reasons we drill the hole is because if you don't drill a hole, you're dealing with cutting and trimming all of this weather stripping, and in the end, it actually ends up causing problems. And so, although everyone likes to avoid drilling a single hole makes it much, much stronger than messing with and cutting all of your weather stripping and grinding latches and all that jazz. So to install this plate, you'll notice that this hole is below the bend. You want the bend above the hole. That's the direction that this plate goes on. And you'll notice as you do this, there's this kind of seam or belt line in the door, that's what you want to match this up with. And you're gonna match it up with the very edge. Sorry, this edge is a little chewed up from us prototyping, but you wanna line this up with the very edge of the door and this seam up here. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna clean off the area of paint on your van so that the 3M VHB tape will adhere. And then you're gonna peel this. And a lot of fighter jets go overhead here. Again, what you wanna do here is press that on and evenly distribute pressure on this to get the adhesive to stick, especially along the top edge, because you don't want water running in to that hole. This is going to be used as your template to drill your hole. So once this is in place, then you can get out a drill bit. This is a handy way to do that is to hold up your bolt here that's going to go through the door and hold your drill bit up. And you want the drill bit to be ever so slightly larger than this bolt, just like this, has a little bit of wiggle room. This template basically makes drilling the hole foolproof, because once you put this template on and you line it up with the edges I told you, so it's kind of foolproof, you drill straight through that hole. It's just that simple. Once you drill through that hole, that's what we're going to use to mount the ladder. Now, on the inside of the door, you've got this panel, and to get this panel off, you want to just basically work a small plastic tool, not like a screwdriver or something that'll scratch the paint. Anything soft like plastic, or what I usually do is I literally just use my fingers and just use a fingernail or something like that. Maybe something soft like a pencil. And you want to reach in behind and pop these. You don't want to peel it, even though that does work a little bit. You really want to pull straight out, because when you peel it, you can break the snaps. So you want to pull straight out, and you can just set this off to the side. So once we're on the interior of the door, you'll be able to look up there and see the hole that you made. And what you'll notice, so hopefully you guys can see up in there. So there's our hole. And the reason we put the bushing and the drill hole right there is because you've got two pieces of metal. You've got the cosmetic sheet metal on the outside, and then you've got this much, much thicker structural sheet metal on the inside. Now there is a small gap in those, and that's what this is for, but we'll deal more with that later. So you've got your hole drilled there. You want to make sure that you get spray paint, and this hasn't been sprayed yet because, again, this was our prototype, but you want to get spray paint on that as well. Even though it's inside, you don't want anything to rust. All right, I want to interrupt this video because things have changed since I first shot the installation video. In fact, one thing you may notice behind me, that's a tire carrier. So in addition to the ladder tire carrier, we now have just the tire carrier. It's something that a ton of you have been requesting, and so we wanted to make that available as well. The installation is identical between the two products. The other thing I want to talk about are hinges. The Ford Transit hinges have been the bane of my existence, and I'll tell you why. We obviously have had stuff for Sprinter for a while, and Sprinter's hinges, I don't think they're made in-house. They're probably made by a supplier, but they are made to a spec, and whether they use one supplier or multiple suppliers, they are the same across those suppliers. Whereas Ford not only has what we call a 180-degree hinge, which is just one that opens a certain amount and doesn't open all the way flat against the door, but the same part number at Ford will have multiple hinges made by different suppliers that have different arrangements and contours. So let's look at the new alternative that we designed. This is 3/16 of steel, and steel doesn't work hardened because steel, if it ever does fail, and this is way too thick for the application as far as failure, it's going to last forever. But if it does fail, it tends to tear, and it's a slow failure. So you see the problem before something catastrophic happens, whereas aluminum, when it goes, it goes. And I'm going to show you here with these calipers. So we are right at about 0.2 inches. And then I'm going to take you on a journey with me. Rolling, 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 keep them dobbies. Dobbies, what's wrong with me? All right, we got another Sprinter here that came in, and I'm not gonna mention the brand, but I'm gonna show you the thickness. So how can we best do this? Let's look down here. Okay, so we're gonna turn these calipers and we're gonna tighten this. We're at about half the thickness of what our bracket is, and those are aluminum, ours are steel. Aluminum, and the strength of aluminum is not anywhere close to the strength of steel. It is lighter, but it is lighter for the same thickness. To get the same strength out of aluminum, you have to go thicker. So our mount that we've designed, and it has welded gussets. So it's a much more complex part. You see all these bends we have to put in this. It's an incredibly complex part to make, but it is the only way that we can foresee using a hinge mounting method for the Transit and working with all the variety of hinges. So I just give you that background, and you might fast forward through all of this, but I give you that background about why we made the design change from this that was frustrating customers to a new steel bracket that we want to ensure is strong enough. Now, we're also going to ship to everyone, because of all the variety and variability in these hinges, a spacer, which some hinges will need and some won't. And I can't even tell you which ones, so we're going to ship it to everyone. So you can see here, if you need a spacer, you will see your hinge has a lip here. Not all hinges have that lip. This one also has the lip. This one does not. Case in point. See the difference there? One has a lip, one does not have a lip. So if you do not have a lip, you can just mount this bracket directly. You can just mount the bracket directly to the hinge. If you have a lip, then you will need to take this spacer and put it on there first, and then, I did this backwards. And then you will have a flat mounting surface for, as the spacer falls out, but it won't when there's bolts in it, for the hinge bracket. Really excited about these because it allows us to come out with a lot more stuff. And again, the strength of this is amazing. And why hasn't anyone else gone to this? Well, it's because the gap in the door, and we have a prototype on this van, so I'm gonna show you how to install it in a minute, but the gap on this door between the door and the body is 3/16. And so you might ask yourself, two objects can't take up the exact same time and space. That doesn't sound right. Let me try that again. Two objects cannot take up the exact same space at the same time. Now, I guess, is it quantum physics? Might disagree with me with the trading of atoms and so on, but as far as the real world that we live in, not a simulation, you can't have a 3/8 inch part and a 3/8 inch gap. So what did we do? Well, we ground down the steel ever so slightly. And it's important, hold on, we got a fighter jet. 4 fighter jets. So we took down this material ever so slightly because you've only got a couple of options as far as steel thickness. So you can't go like 1,000th below 3/16. It doesn't exist. So we took this and we just took ever so slightly amount of steel off the very corner, and that allows it to fit. Now, we're also including a small amount of PPF that's gonna go on the inside of the door. So it's locked. So what we've done here, and this is a prototype, so disregard the fact that it's regular steel. This is powder coated, and this is what the final version will look like. But what we've done here is really try to follow these contours as tightly as possible, because again, that gap between here and here is very tight. And then what we did is, you can see if I come in the other side, how close we go to that plastic. So this comes right in there and it just barely touches that plastic. And the point there is, we want to wrap this as tight as possible, not only to clear the gap, but also to add structure. You see how wide this is? This allows, and because it ties in here with the gusset, and it makes it incredibly strong. So we wanted to make this mounting area the same to our ladder, but be incredibly strong. Now, because of this, I mentioned that we ground the brackets ever so slightly to get them to clear. And the other thing that we include with your kit is some of these little PPF strips, which can go right here on your door underneath that hinge. And then we also have a long one here that is this one here that you can put here and trim down if you want. But realistically, none of this paint is seen. So even if you get some contact there, you can take a dead blow mallet and do a tap tap if you want. This was our prototype rubbing. That's how we learn when things hit. So yours should not do that. But again, this is not seen. And so it's much better to have something like that happen than, I'll walk over here. This is the other scenario. So you see the PPF is on the actual outside cosmetic skin of the door. You see how thin this aluminum bracket is, and you see it's already hitting the door. So what happens is, as you use the product, this will eventually come into contact with the door and it will start to cause denting over time. The first thing you're gonna do is remove top and bottom factory bolts, and then you're gonna do the same on the upper hinge. You're gonna keep this bolt is gonna remain in the door, and the reason for that is so you don't have to realign your doors. So that was something that we chose to do, so you don't have to take out all of your parts. And you're gonna have the angle or the larger side of the gusset towards the door. You're gonna put it on top first like this and lever it. Now here's where it's gonna get tight. Right here, this is actually gonna squeeze your hinge a little bit. You're gonna wanna try to move this there, and then you just press hard and it pops on, okay? And so then once this is over that hinge, you can then install the bolts that come with it. In the kit, you're gonna have these longer bolts. These are what's gonna replace the factory bolts, just get a little bit more thread in there. So then this is quite simple. You're just gonna thread these in where that hinge, or sorry, where those original bolts were.
And then it's simply a matter of tightening them down.
Nice and tight there. And then in here are gonna go your bolts. These are the button head black stainless bolts, and then those are gonna go right in this way. Here is, we're gonna put this paint protection film on the paint, but once the bracket is installed, it shouldn't move around on that door. So you're just gonna stick this vertically right here on the edge, and then roll it over, and then do the same on the top. And if you want to trim it shorter, you can. So that's good. And then the last piece, you're going to put right here along this door seam. And if you want, you can, if you're getting contact, you can actually just tap, tap, tap. This part sticks out. You can hit it with a dead blow hammer and just knock it back. Again, this is not seen. So what you do if you're going to do that is you put some tape on it and then tap, 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 and it'll move this whole section back and it won't impact the hinge. But what you're kind of doing as far as prep means that you're going to have a stronger carrier once it's all mounted. Now we're going to mount the top hinge. Top hinge mounts the same as the bottom. Again, if you need a spacer, put the spacer in. This is just going to come over the top of the hinge and then sneak through there and then sit here. You want to make sure this clears that washer. So it should be nice and tight to that door. You can see there's almost no gap. And it's actually better to be really tight and against it than to be slightly off of it and wobbling. So it's actually going to protect your paint more in the long run by being tight. And so we've got that dialed. And then you've got your button heads, which you're going to put in. And it'll be a little tight for this one. So bottom one is easy. Tight one, the way I do it is I will just, you don't want to hammer it. You don't want to smash it with a hammer or anything because that'll just take the powder off. You just kind of screw it past that little tight spot. And then once it gets past that tight spot, you're ready to go to the ladder. But one quick thing that I realized is you're going to want to put your all thread on your ladder as well. It doesn't have to be tight, but I would get it on there. And the way you do this is you stick that all thread through with one washer on the all thread behind. And then on the front side, you're going to have another washer, a lock washer, and this nut. Okay? So again, on the back is the end of the bolt and one washer. On the front side, washer, locking nut, and actual nut. So, sorry, not locking nut, locking washer and nut. And then we can tighten this up later because we're going to move it up and down depending on the size of the tire that you have. Easy to put that on now. We already talked a little bit about this peg, so we've already got that on there. Now what we're going to do with this, and there's a couple ways to do this. What I like to do is grab this long bolt is what you're going to use for that third mounting point over there, but you can actually use this without the bushing to help hold this end of the ladder up. Again, what you want to do here is you've got your bolts. I'm just going to set them here. Excuse me. You've got your washers and nuts. We just got one nut on top holding it in place. And then you can kind of reach your fingers in there and hold these bolts from pushing through while you jiggle this on. And then it's as simple as washer, washer. So we're just going to start it right now. We're not actually going to get this tightened down. We're just going to put these nuts on to hold it in place, and then we'll reopen the door. We got washer and a nut on the bottom, and then we're going to have a washer and a nut on the upper one here. And then you should have at this point one nut and 2 washers, because we only put one nut on the top to hold it in place while we did this. So now you can go back and get this bottom one sorted. And then we can now safely take off this top nut that was just used to hold it in place, put the washer that's needed underneath it. And again, everything's going to still be loose. Now I'm just going to tighten down the top and bottom bolts, and this already has this installed, but I'm going to show you how. So by putting this bolt in, you're just going to hold this in the proper area, and then you can go back and tighten the other bolts that are on the hinges. So now we've got everything tight. The hinges look great, and we just install this third mounting point, and you're done. What we're going to do next is this third mounting point. So one of the things we worried a lot about with the Transit is this sheet metal. It tends to be very thin back here. That's why we found that spot with a bunch of structure, and that's why our ladders are so rock solid. But we don't take chances here at Owl, so we use this big giant bushing. And the reason we use this is so that when you slam the door like you're not supposed to, always close your door purposely, but when your door gets slammed, this bushing is actually going to soak up a lot of that energy, and it's going to be kinder to your van. That's why we designed it that way. This bolt that you put in earlier to help hold the ladder up, you can now take out. So the bolts are stainless steel, aluminum. So by running a bolt in here, if you're scratching any paint off on the inside, where of course you won't see it, you're not going to rust. A lot of the other products out there are steel. They will absolutely rust. This bushing has 2 different sides to it. That's because we use it for different applications. Don't worry about that. It doesn't matter what direction you put the bushing. So either way is fine. I tend to think it looks a little bit cleaner with the smaller side out, because then you don't see it as much here. So I'm going to put the smaller side out. Then you got to find that hole. Next step is we're going to actually get in there and put that last bolt on, and then you're pretty close to done. This takes a lot longer in the video than it does in real life. So now you're going to find this funky, weird looking, it looks like a can opener or a bottle opener. It's not. This is going to fill that little space that we showed you earlier in there. And what you're going to do is you're going to stick this in. Let's pretend this is the bolt coming through that door from the outside, okay? We're going to stick this in that gap and then let it hang. And all this is doing is taking up that space between the 2 pieces of sheet metal, so that when you tighten the bolt down, you're not going to get a sandwich, or you are going to get a sandwich. You're not going to get a denting of that exterior sheet metal. It's going to keep everything nice and tight. And you might need to kind of work that around. It's going to be a tight fit, so you might need to get something to push on that, like a screwdriver or something. So then what I do is I just take this wrench and tap, 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 tap that into that gap. So now we're going to get this washer and this nut, and we're going to put that on the end of that bolt. This little part that you took off of that bolt, don't throw that away. We're going to use that after we're done tightening this. So just set that off to the side. Then we're going to I take an open-ended wrench. I'm going to reach up in here and get that wrench on that nut. And then I can tighten from this side here. Now, once you get down towards the end, this has got a bushing, so it's not going to get tight. There's a nylock on that nut to keep it from backing out. You do not want to compress this bushing. As soon as you start to see any sort of compression, stop tightening. So what we're getting here is a little bit of compression. So this bushing just now is getting compressed. That's when you should stop tightening. And the reason for that is if you continue to tighten this, you're only going to compress the bushing. Well, if the bushing is compressed, it can't do its job of soaking up that energy. So you do not want to squish the bushing, okay? So notice here that I have tightened this and that bushing is still completely, I don't know what you call it, square, if you will. It's not bulging in the middle because it's been over tightened. So that's an important fact, or important part to remember. Now we have this little thing, and why do we want this little thing? Well, we got to go back inside the door now that we're tight. The reason we have this part is this bolt, although we had a longer one in this van for a while that kind of started to chew a hole in this foam, we got a smaller bolt, but we don't want to take any chances. So you take this little piece of, I think it's like vinyl, and you put that over the end of the bolt, and that's just going to keep that bolt nice and soft so that your foam protection on this cable is not going to get worn at all. So that's where that goes. Well, what do you think? Starting to look like a ladder. We're basically at this point close to done. What you want to do is tighten up this thing, but you can only do that once you realize where your tire is. And what I mean by that is the center bore of your tire. Of course, we have the best transit wheels on the market, the Owl Talon. And the way I do this is I leave this kind of loose. It's not loose right now because we've already set it up for a Talon, but you leave it kind of loose. You set the bottom of the tire on there, and you kind of tilt it up, and you should be able to move it up or down, and you want it to come through the dead center of the wheel. So again, the way I did that is you put the tire on like this, and if this is loose, you can twist it, moving it up or down, and you just check it. You want it to clear, you just pick the wheel up slowly, and you make sure it clears, and then once you get it in the right spot, I take the wheel off again, not just down, but off. And then you put, I put a screwdriver in this hole to hold it. And then I put an open-ended wrench on this to tighten everything down. That's basically the way you do it. Once you get it in the right spot, you can put your Owl Talon back on your ladder. A little bit dirty, sorry about that. Then you are going to get your beautiful Owl ladder tire handle and the ladder puck that works for your van. Again, this is what you get because this works with the factory Ford wheel. This puck, on the other hand, is for a smaller hubbed wheel like the Owl Talon. You want to screw that down pretty tight because you don't want this wheel to shake and wobble when you're off-road. The other thing you want to do is, if you care about your wheels, put a padlock on there. That's what that hole is for. And please, please, people, the number of vans I see where this thing is like this. Where is your OCD? Why do you not have mental illness like me? You need this. Oh, got the puck in there. We need this to be flat, level, like that. I hope that's level. That's not level. How's that? That's good. Keep it level, my friends. That is the job done. We've got the ladder tire all installed. These bolts, go through, do yourself a favor, go through and make one last check. Check those, make sure they're tight. Check those, make sure they're tight. Go inside the door. Now's your chance if you have at all, if there is a chance that you did not tighten these bolts that hold these on, or the upper bolts. And then you have, of course, the bolt in here. And once all of those things are tight, look at how solid that is. You've got an Owl ladder tire for your Transit that will hold up to even the toughest environments. I appreciate you guys trusting Owl for your gear needs. I appreciate everybody that waited for this ladder. Hopefully you think that it was worth the wait, and hopefully the installation goes smoothly for you. If you have any questions, we are here at the ready, answer your call, and we'll help walk you through it. So any questions, again, email customer service or give us a ring and we will get you sorted. If you want any more tips and tricks about vans, adventure vans, and van life, you can follow our YouTube channel where we have lots of videos every week.